What a race weekend. Number 2 already in the books. There's only 22 more races to go. Only 22, Tim. And a lot of travel for you. But that's coming up later on this season.
Yeah, later.
The biggest story of the day, and the thing that we have to start with, it's not the winners. It's not even the top 3, actually. It's how did Kimi Antonelli end up with driver of the day?
That's what you're starting with?
No, I'm kidding. I know we got to talk Ferrari, but what the hell happened there? Kimi Antonelli, no disrespect, started 8th, ended 8th. That's cool. But what, man? He must have like Italian bot farms just voting for him. Constant.
How are we starting with this? Okay. Yeah. Antonelli getting driver of the day. Look, I think he's great. He's very talented, obviously. He is the most well-prepared rookie on the grid that started this season. But there were some other drives out there that were much more impressive.
Name 2.
Esteban Ocon, Ollie Behrman.
There you go. And we are going to talk about them a little later. Let's get to the actual top story, though, Tim, which was a shocker. Both Ferraris DQ'd. And I'm going to run down my basic understanding of it, and then we can sort of talk about it. So the first thing I understand is, first thing I wanted to read you is a tweet from a Ferrari fan at Leclerc's Letters. She just tweeted this today. Being a Ferrari fan, you learn that you can never ask, can it get any worse than this? Because it definitely can. On Lewis's, it looks like the skid block was worn too thin. And by the way, it was 9 millimeters. That's what the length needs to be. His was at 8.5 millimeters, which is basically the width of a credit card difference. It's like nothing.
So it was. So it's the rear skid.
Yeah.
Rear skid block.
And what does that do?
So hold on. It's found to be. So it was 0.5 millimeters below the limit.
Right.
So continue with your.
Yeah. So that's the 9 millimeters versus 8.5 that I read. And then from what I understand, that is the thing that stops the cars from running too low to the ground. So in a weekend where you've got a sprint race, there's probably a lot of adjustments taking place. Is that just a pit crew mistake, a mechanical mistake? Like, how does that happen?
Well, we're not going to know more, Adam, until we get to Japan. And we actually get to go and sit down and do some press conference stuff. But this is something similar that did happen to Lewis back in, I want to say 2023 at the U.S. Grand Prix. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly where it was. And again, just having the skid blocks or the plank wear, and that's just essentially having the car too low to the ground. And that could be setup wise. It's probably what led them to that. And the amount that it's being worn down, it's not much, right? But again, you have to enforce the rules, and that's what the FIA is doing. It is something similar, like I had said, to the USGP 2023. I believe Leclerc was also disqualified from that one as well, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm sure the compliments section will correct me if I've got that one wrong. But yeah, if you get the cars, a lot of this, Adam, has to do if you go back to when we had porpoising. And the drivers really complaining about, their health, how bad this is for their backs, their spines, and trying to make sure that the teams didn't run the cars too low to the ground. And so the implementation of this is how low you can do it. This is how much wear can be on the plank. And if you go over that, then you're disqualified. So again, here we are, disqualified. As for Leclerc, he was found to be underweight by, I think it was 1 kg. Yes,
and the car is supposed to weigh 800, right? Exactly.
So I think, he came in at 799 or something with him and the car. This is the same thing as what happened to George Russell at the Belgian Grand Prix last year.
And
if he just eats a steak.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, so does this have to do, because I was wondering, they were talking about the race beforehand with a couple of different factors. First off, a lot of teams, including McLaren, planned for a safety car at some point. Someone going off track, causing an accident, that sort of thing.
Yes.
That's number one. Number two, because a lot of teams expected a second stop, and one of those being under safety car.
Yes.
They expected to have thicker tires at the end of the race.
Correct.
And that is probably the difference with Leclerc.
Correct.
Because they were able to replace the front wing, right? Just to put it on weight. You're allowed to replace, apparently you're allowed to replace parts as long as they're identical. And so they did replace the front wing and then weighed the car.
So, if Leclerc just picks up a little more excess rubber by driving offline or lifts and coasts for, part of the race, I mean, that's where that weight differential could come into effect. Yep. It is a very harsh penalty, but again, the rules, right? And the FIA, hey, they're implementing the rules. You can't get upset with the FIA for doing that because they are doing what they're being paid to do. And if you're underweight, you're underweight. That's just the way it is. The brutal thing is, Adam, is that both drivers and team, these are valuable points, getting away from them early in the season, which we've seen from last year. If last year has anything to say about it, if you get off to a bad start, it's really hard to close that gap, especially in the Drivers' Championship standings.
Right.
And so for Hamilton and Leclerc, who were they were sitting decently in the points after this race. I mean, Leclerc was 6th with 18 points. He was tied for 5th against Antonelli, and Hamilton would have been 7th with 17 points. You're in the sort of ballpark at that point, right?
Yes, exactly.
I mean, and now it's not even. I wouldn't say it's not even close. I mean, it is going to be closer, but the thing is that you're just throwing away valuable points that you could use. I mean, Leclerc is 10th with 8 points. Hamilton is 9th with 9 points.
Yeah, it's not a great start. Well, and you look at the team standings, Tim, and we're going to come back to this a couple of times because sometimes it's like what teachers used to tell me in school, do really well in the first half of the year because trying to bring your grade point average up later when it starts bad is really hard. If you start strong and you slip a little, it's still an average of where you started from to where you are. Now, looking at this, Ferrari's 5th place, but I look at, Red Bull, 36 points, and that's with one driver, right? And we'll talk about Max and Liam and Yuki and all that in a second. Mercedes has 57. McLaren already has 78. Yeah. So Ferrari was, and when we talked preseason a few weeks ago, we were talking about Ferrari like they're the big challenger. They're the one we're watching. Yep. They're the ones that's really going to challenge McLaren this year. And for them to start this way, I don't think there's any other way to look at it other than it's a disaster. And I want to read you the second half of their statement, and then I want to get your thoughts here. Yep. Obviously, they explained everything that we explained about what happened with Lewis's car and what Charles's car. But in the second paragraph on their Instagram statement, it says, there was no intention to gain advantage. We will learn from what happened today and make sure we don't make these mistakes again. Clearly, it's not the way we wanted to end our Chinese GP weekend, neither for ourselves nor for our fans whose support for us is unwavering. And you saw that in the stands. You saw it when Lewis won the sprint race, which was phenomenal. It was like, okay, here they come. Tim, what do you think the feeling in Ferrari is right now? This could not be a worse way to end this weekend.
Yeah, obviously devastated. If you're Fred Vasseur, I mean, you've done a good job of keeping everyone level-headed and working and pushing forward. And I think that's what's so good about Fred Vasseur is he's such a calming influence over the team, where in the past, they never really had that. He's going to have his work cut out for him after this one, because this is going to be a tough one to digest because they know how difficult this championship is going to be. But at the end of the day, with Lewis Hamilton's sprint win and very competitive qualifying, they're there. They're in the window. They're in the ballpark. There's going to be tracks where they are going to be extremely competitive. There are going to be tracks that are a bit of an outlier. There are going to be tracks where they're going to struggle. And it's all about just sort of, this season just hanging around. Yeah. You just got to hang around, and you never know what's going to happen, like a disqualification or something. And this is something that, I kind of compare, Lance Stroll to, where it's not a great car, done a great job of just hanging around. And that's what this season, I think, is going to, and we'll talk about Lance later, but that's what this season is going to be about. It's just making sure you're capturing good points every single race, the best that you can get, no mistakes. And, for Ferrari, I mean, this is a huge mistake. It's definitely going to be a very uphill battle for them from here on out, because these are a lot of points that they just gave up.
This is the first time we've had 3 disqualifications because Pierre Gasly was also disqualified for being underweight, although his subtraction from the grid is less consequential because it doesn't include points. But it's the first time we've had 3 DQs in the same Grand Prix since 2004. It's been a long time. It's crazy. Okay. Now, I don't know if that's the scrutineers just being more on it this year, or if it's just sort of the way it happens, right? I remember one of Sebastian Vettel's best races at Aston Martin, he was disqualified. He made it to the podium, but then they realized he didn't have a liter of fuel left in the tank, so they couldn't test it properly, which is such a bummer, right? It was such a good race for him. Mm-hmm. I look at this situation for Ferrari and I go, this has got to be already a very early pivot point this season. This is either going to go bad, or they're going to look at this and go, wow, we need to get our stuff together, and here's our wake-up call. What do you think it's more likely?
Wake-up call.
Wake-up call.
For sure. Because
they weren't finishing strong in this race anyway, right? Well, 5-7 is not what they would have wanted.
Is that what it was? Or I thought it was 5-6.
Was it 5-6? Yeah, so in that range, though. I think they would have been wanted to be top 4 at least.
I've had 4 hours of sleep.
I know, I could tell, buddy. Are you all right? You hanging in there? These overnighters are horrible.
Hanging in there. Look, I think the main thing is that they're starting to iron out what their issues were. I mean, they had some simulator problems heading into Australia. I think that was part of the reason why they were so far off the pace, but then corrected fairly well for the sprint quali. I don't think a lot of people really thought like they were going to be able to get pole position.
No.
But with qualifying, and I said this in the post-qualifying podcast, is that you just had to like put it together. I mean, not every corner was going to be perfect. It's really hard to get a perfect lap in anything.
Yep.
And that's just, Lewis putting together, decent sector 1, a really good sector 2, and a really good sector 3. And that's all he kind of needed to do. And that's how he got pole position. And that's how close this season is going to be, right? It's just making sure you're limiting the mistakes, but you're really putting good quality laps together for qualifying. In the race, it's a bit of a different story, right? Like Leclerc and Hamilton had contact. Charles didn't mean to hit Lewis, but at the end of the day, broke part of the front wing and ran around for most of the race with that front wing end plate just broken right off the car, but still had pretty good performance.
Yep.
Swapping the cars was interesting. I didn't expect Ferrari to actually go through with that. Listening to the radio messages from Lewis and Riccardo Adami, and then obviously Leclerc and his engineer as well, and finally pulling the trigger on that decision. I think it was a fairly good move, and it just seemed like for Leclerc, I guess, and Hamilton as well, it was all about that tire management. Like McLaren's really good at it. Mercedes, you can see, is actually pretty decent at it as well. Mm-hmm. The Red Bull is starting to get a little better at that too. And now Ferrari, it's like their turn. Like they've got to figure out how to get a little better with the tire management throughout the race, because you can really see it deg and drop off.
Yeah.
And eventually that's what happens with Leclerc, and similar to Hamilton. I think Hamilton was able to do a little better job with the tires at the same time. But it's such a big learning weekend for them that it could unlock potential of this car a little bit later, like maybe in Japan or Bahrain or Saudi Arabia. And we'll see what kind of upgrades, if they bring any to Japan. I kind of doubt it. But you never know. Again, it's just going to be so tight, the championship is, Adam. And again, I just have to keep coming back to like these little mistakes, and it's unfortunate because that entire team worked really hard over the weekend. So did the drivers, but again, it's all about the small details, man. Like just the tiniest of details for this season, and anything's gonna throw you out. So it's tough moving forward. I mean, Ferrari's gonna have to really really lock in now. Like this is these are a lot of points they just lost.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Moving on from Ferrari, we got to talk about the other huge drama that's unfolding on the paddock. It's amazing that we're in race 2 and we're already talking about something like this.
Oh.
But Liam Lawson, Yuki Tsunoda, and Red Bull. And going into, I believe it was the sprint race, Max Verstappen was asked about Liam Lawson's poor practice and qualifying time. So he qualified poorly for the sprint race as well as the main race. And Max said, listen, in a non-mean way, this is not Max eating up a teammate or anything. He said it might make more sense for him to be in a Racing Bull car.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, you saw it last year. He was faster in that. And he insinuated that this is not an easy car to drive generally, and that it's a very sharp, front-heavy sort of thing, which Max likes and Max can manage, but that basically nobody else seems to be able to do. Like, this is a one-driver sort of setup. And Liam Lawson being a guy who, some consider a rookie, some consider he's not a veteran, whatever he is. This is a guy that's never raced a full season. Him being put into that car, which a vet like Sergio Perez could not get results out of last year, is a little bit unfair. And I think Max was trying to give Liam Lawson a little bit of grace here.
Yeah.
Liam did try to, get around the Sauber cars and tried to have some battles with Jack Doohan and some of the Haas stuff a little bit early on in the race. But ultimately, even in this race with a 14th place finish, you're nowhere near where Red Bull expects you to be.
Yeah.
And that's with 2 DQs ahead of them, maybe even 3 depending upon where Gasly was going to finish. It's not great. So what do you do, Tim? And what have you heard? Because there's a lot of rumors in the paddock. I don't know if you want me to get into them, but there's enormous.
Yeah, I can address some of the Lawson stuff. I mean, because there are quite a few rumors.
Like a flip for
around.
Yuki Tsunoda, right?
Yeah, and this is what I've heard. I mean, there is a possibility that does exist that Lawson could be replaced for Japan by Yuki Tsunoda. There's a meeting scheduled at Red Bull Racing Factory to essentially, go over what do they need to do to kind of close the gap in this championship. Because I think that when you look at, obviously Max Verstappen and his performances in a car that it's like I had said back in Australia and on those podcasts, is in a car it's not fantastic, right? Like this isn't a great car, and it does look like it's a very tricky car to get into an operating window. We saw that by what happened in Bahrain and what happened again in Australia. And for a driver like Liam Lawson, who's just coming in and having to learn all of that, it's like I always say, it's like drinking through a fire hose. It's impossible to nail it down. He's been put in a very difficult position, and it's just not working out for him right now, Adam. It's really not. The team tried a very aggressive setup with the car for this race for Liam. That's why he started from pit lane, because they broke Parc Fermé rules to switch around the suspension setup. It made the car a lot harder to drive, actually. It didn't make it easier to drive. In fact, it probably brought out some of the worst aspects of the car.
Wow.
So very hard for him to really perform well with something like that. But again, right, it is a car that is engineered more towards Max's style, which is very unique. And, you did say it, he likes a pointy front end. And the thing is, the more they engineer this car, the more they bring components to it. It's kind of like the more bite the front end is going to get, the more sensitive it is going to get as the season sort of moves along and the car keeps developing, because he'll go in that direction, right? Max will go in that direction. I thought it was fair for what Max had said. Like he literally is saying, like, this is a really hard car to drive. Like, even he's having a lot of trouble as well. And I do agree with his point that, if you took Lawson and you put him back in the Racing Bulls, I guarantee you he does well. I really do. Because I think the drivability of that car is much greater than what they have at Red Bull. It makes sense if they do go forward and swap those two drivers of Tsunoda and Lawson, because I think Yuki does deserve a chance. But again, it's not the Racing Bulls car, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, you could potentially make all the swaps you really wanted to, and it just may not work out for any driver except for Max.
And Tim,
So
obviously Max is already second in the driver's standings, which is hilarious. Like he is very quietly having a pretty good start.
He's incredible, man. Like
the guy walks on water. It's amazing.
Oh my God. Like, like if you, sorry to cut you off.
No.
This is where, like, if we go back to 2023, remember when like Verstappen was just dominating everything, and people were like, well, this is boring, blah 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 blah. Look, I get it. I get that, but again, you have to understand what we're seeing. Like, this guy is absolutely incredible.
This car shouldn't be anywhere near where it is.
This car, yeah, Adam, like this, like he should not be. I don't think he should be second in the driver's standings right now because of where the car is. Like he is really just, yeah, he's fantastic to watch. That's for sure.
A couple of comments leading into the weekend. Zach Brown, who loves to take shots at Christian Horner, said that he thought that Yuki. Oh no, that was after last race. I'm repeating this, but that he said it's weird that they didn't put Yuki in. They make strange lineup decisions over there, and then. Secondarily, Yuki Tsunoda said, "I'm ready to go whenever they need me." Thomas Marr, who's a F1 journalist, he said that obviously no decisions have been made, kind of corroborating what you're hearing, Tim. He said that if decisions are made, it would be with cooler heads, away from the track, like you kind of mentioned in a meeting or something like that. No decisions to be made until the race week for Suzuka. And he said Franco Colapinto is understood to be nowhere near involved in any of the discussions. Franco's name sort of came up after the race this morning as a guy that potentially Red Bull could be looking at, which they apparently had interest in him last year as well. But it also came down to, okay, so like, who are we pushing out? It's not going to be Yuki. We want to try Isaac. We think Liam's great, so it doesn't really make sense to pursue him the way Alpine did. Tim, if Yuki Tsunoda steps into this car and he finds the same issues, at a certain point, like, I think it still would be better to keep him there because he's a veteran driver. But at a certain point, it's going to make sense for Red Bull to stop throwing the baby out with the bathwater and go, this car stinks, and we got to make this more drivable, because ultimately, I know you want to win a driver's championship, but winning the team championship makes more money for the team, right?
Yeah.
It's the one that really directly affects the team.
Yeah.
And so if you have a one-car team or a car that's so suited for one driver that no one else can drive it, it seems like that's a failure of engineering. And at a certain point, we got to have a talk about what's going on at the Red Bull factory if they can't sort it out. And they've got some talented engineers there.
I think when you look at a driver's driving style and you look at who are your best drivers, in Red Bull's case, that is Max Verstappen, then you need to tailor that to Max's style. And you need to find a way within the regulation to get the car there. If you go back to the 2017, 2018, 2019 regulations, 2020, 2021, that regulation was easier to get to Max's style. And at the same time, those cars were, I don't want to say they were easier to drive. They were much more forgiving. That's for sure. That's for sure. And I think when you look at, his teammates, did they struggle? Yes. Are they struggling as much as, say, Perez did throughout this regulation? Now Lawson, no. I mean, his teammates weren't fantastic at keeping up with him, but they weren't, like hugely far off. It's the fact that you've baked this type of engineering into the DNA of the car. So you can't really go back and reverse engineer everything. You don't have the money, you don't have the time, and you don't have the wind tunnel resources.
Yeah.
You have a cost cap, and you have wind tunnel and CFD design time that you're allotted because of where you finished in the championship from last season. So you have to manage that. You have a new regulation that's coming for 2026. So you can't spend all your time just fixing, redesigning, whatever it is. Like, this is the car that they have.
Yes.
And this is what they have for the rest of the season. They have to try and find other ways of still making it quick, but also making it quick in what Max does, and then hoping that the driver, whoever it's going to be, can figure it out, can find a setup that can at least keep them close. They're not looking for anyone to finish like P1, P2, right?
Right.
They're just looking for someone to get into the points.
Yeah.
Just hang around, like I was saying. I mean, Christian Horner had said something similar, right? They're just looking to get a driver in there who can, I'm paraphrasing here, who can get points. That's what they're looking for. So whether that's going to be Liam Lawson or Yuki Tsunoda remains to be seen.
Right.
Eric Van Haren, whenever he's very close to Red Bull Racing, he's very close to the Max Verstappen camp, and he put out a tweet after the race, a few hours after the race, just saying that Helmut Marko had confirmed to Sky Germany that there is a meeting that's scheduled at Milton Keynes this week.
Well, and Christian said on the Sky Sports, like the English version after show, he said, we're going to look at the data and see what we can do to support Liam, but we also need a driver who can score us points. Do you think Yuki stepping into that will allow them to stay? I mean, we have to talk about his wing today, his front wing just busting on its own.
It's crazy.
Pain in the ass, and he was having a good race, good qualifying. He raced well all weekend. So that has to be frustrating. But he's been very, very good in that Racing Bulls car. And I think, okay, if he's got to do a huge adjustment going into his home race, which is not an easy circuit, as you'll see when we do our little sim race in advance of the next weekend. I just feel like, is that setting Yuki up for failure as well?
It very well could be, right? You have to remember that, this is going to be commercially a very big weekend for Yuki Tsunoda. Home race, like you had said, Adam, there's a lot of commercial things that are going to be happening in lead up to and during that race weekend in Japan. Mm-hmm. He is a very big personality there now. And if you were to move him up into the big seat, oh, wow, that's a massive story. Like that is a huge story coming into this weekend, not just in the motorsport community, but outside of that globally as well. It's a huge, huge story for Yuki to get that opportunity.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Is that the right place to do it? Like you're saying, Adam, I don't know.
Because he's going to have media commitments and everything.
Yeah, but Suzuka is like, oh, dude, Suzuka is crazy. Like, you've seen how fast that track is on the sim.
It's crazy.
Just me driving it, I was just like, I just can't believe. I was just like, wow. This. First of all, this track is awesome. Second of all, I don't know if I would in a car that I don't know if I would want to jump in. and tackle Suzuka.
Sorry, Christian, no thanks. You can stick with Liam for now.
I would want some testing for sure. That's just me. But for Tsunoda, if he were able to get that opportunity commercially wise, Adam, it's huge. Would they be setting him up for failure? I don't know. That's such we'd have to see him in the car. Like,
the other question I had, if Red Bull were in the room right now, like if they're top brass, did they not see this coming in preseason testing with Liam? Did they not know?
Well,
is this a surprise?
Well, Lawson didn't get a ton of testing time either. Let's remember that, like, he had a lot of that car had mechanical issues.
Yes.
During the second day of testing, which was scheduled for Liam to run the entire day. And he was sidelined for a big portion of that. So you miss out on so many different things, right? You miss out on your performance runs. You miss out on your long runs. You miss out on different things the team wants to test with the car, different types of setups. How does that feel? How does the driver feel? How's the driver feel when we do this? And how does the driver feel when we change this? So these are all different things that are extremely important in testing, which is why testing isn't long enough, in my opinion, especially for younger drivers. he's being thrown into a very difficult position on track. Tracks he doesn't even know. Like, doesn't know Australia, China, knows Japan, right? He knows Suzuka. He's raced there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, okay, well, maybe you just leave him in the car.
Yep.
See how he does on a track that he understands, and then make another judgment and see where you're at. See where he is at a track that he does understand. I don't know. It's just, and then there's the other side of the coin, Adam, is like, you can't give up points in this championship. Like, we've already seen how tight this is going to be. Like, look what happened to Ferrari. And we're already talking like, holy geez, like, it's going to be hard for them to win anything, like win a championship, constructors or drivers, because of losing those valuable points. Like,
100%.
That's how important this is going to be this year. Like, that's how close everything is. So it's up to Red Bull to roll the dice on whatever it is they want to do. And it's really hard to tell with them at some points. You know that.
One thing you might not know about Tim and I is that Tim and I are men. And we're men who struggle to, there it is, we struggle to show off our big manly muscles, right, Tim? Don't
manly muscles.
Well, that's why we have True Classic t-shirts. They are a tailored fit. They bring out the good side and hide the bad side. You know, because the reality is that sometimes, I have found this, Tim, you go to a store, you try on a man's shirt, and it fits like a lampshade. It just kind of flares out everywhere, like a bell bottom, but up top. Do you know what I'm saying?
Homer Simpson, like, walking around in his muumuu.
Yeah, 100%. And True Classic, well, they've got best-selling t-shirt, hoodies, jeans in 3, 6, and 9 packs. The more that you bundle, the more you save, and they are meant for men, plus they're premium clothes at an affordable price. And 100% perfect fit guarantee with easy returns, trusted by over 4 million people and 200,000 5-star reviews. So whether you're bundling up for the cold or getting ready for spring, level up your style and your clothes that actually fit right. Just go to our exclusive link, trueclassic.com/dangle, DANGLE. That's trueclassic.com/dangle, and show off your muscles with True Classic. Right, Tim? There it is. 100%. That reading the tea leaves there, man, you would have had me convinced that Daniel Ricciardo was going to take over for Sergio Perez
a lot of people
last year in the summer. So I reading the tea leaves with Red Bull, always fascinating and hard. And we'll see what happens. Now, I did want to mention
just one more thing. I do appreciate the fact that Max is actually speaking up and saying something about it.
Well, yeah, because it's not like, I think Liam Lawson's taken a lot of crap because he is an extremely confident human being. And in Drive to Survive, he comes across as an extremely confident human being, and people, then you become a mark, you become a target.
Sure.
But the idea that Red Bull has put the millions and millions of dollars into developing this driver, and after 2 races, he's toast. That's just an insane waste of resources. Like, you just don't do that. And I like the idea of him going back to Racing Bulls and just going and racing and getting, and then allowing Red Bull to figure out their car. So if they ever do want to bring him back up, or if Yuki doesn't work out or whatever, then you got him. You got him.
Yeah, you're not shattering his confidence, right?
Yes, and Yuki is going to be able to handle a difficult car. Lord knows that's all he's been given at the F1 level. Like, they've all been really hard cars to drive,
except for this one. This one,
yeah, this one seems great.
Yeah, so if I'm Yuki, if I'm Yuki, I'm probably thinking like, I
can get more points in the Racing Bulls car for sure. Like if I were him, I'd be like, well, maybe I. Can you turn that down if Red Bull offers you that? Can you just say, no,
you can't. You can't turn it down. You got to go do it. Like, he could. I'm sure he could if he wanted. He's got new management now, so it all depends on what they say and what they do. I gotta know why the resistance to him inside Red Bull, other than the Honda thing. I just don't get it, but neither does the rest of the paddock either. So we'll see what happens. I also want to talk about Mercedes here, Tim. By the way, sorry, very quickly on Ferrari, I just read it's the first time they've been double DQ'd in 75 years. Oh, what?
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't include that in the Ferrari segment, but damn, right?
Holy
75 years. That's bad.
Really?
Yeah, Mattia Binotto's like, not so easy, is it? George Russell quietly having an incredible start, and Kimi Antonelli is 5th with 22 points in 2 races. That's good enough for 5th in the drivers' standings. I'm not sure if you saw the clip of the Chinese fan before the race saying, George was going just for a walk, and he was talking to Sky Sports, and the guy yelled, "You're so handsome, George!" And George was like, "Great, can you say that on mic?" And then he was like, "George, you're so handsome." He's like, "Thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure everybody saw that." George Russell, very quiet couple of races, not a lot of drama, good qualifying, good sprint. George Russell, Tim Perini. How about this guy quietly, calmly taking over leadership of the Mercedes team?
It's great. I mean, this is great for George. It's what he needs. Got that contract year. He's in it. This is what Toto wants to see. He's proven himself for sure. Just, again, like I said, just hanging around, man. He's just hanging around. He was just there. The same thing we did in Australia. He's doing it again in China. However, this time, that car looks way different. They look way more competitive.
They do.
I think they've got a really good car there. I think they could be definitely challenging in the constructors. I think George could definitely challenge for the drivers' championship as well. If they can build out on what they have, because right now they've got a really good car to start the season. It's got good bones. It's got something they can really build upon. It was interesting to hear what he had said about, when we get to higher temp tracks and how McLaren deals with how their car deals with the higher temps, and then they'll get a good gauge for where they are at all around, because they have had different tracks where in different weather conditions, and they could have a bigger gauge now. I think, Adam, like if they go with Japan and track temps are like really, really high, they'll have an understanding now of like all around where do they need to start moving the car towards. And, by the time you get to Miami or just after Miami, Spain, even, you're probably going to see another evolution of this car that's going to be even closer to the McLarens, because this is a good car. And George,
and these are good drivers.
Yeah, George is dialed in, and so is Antonelli. Antonelli's been fantastic as a rookie. He's been really good.
Now I look at the I look at that Mercedes car, and first off, I sort of wonder if Lewis goes, "For God's sakes, like I just left. You couldn't have had that for me the last couple of years." Secondly, though, it's kind of a nice way to ease a rookie in to a top team. Like, let's be honest. Of all the rookies coming in, I think Liam Lawson and Kimi Antonelli are under the most pressure because they're with a top team. And, most guys like George Russell have to go through some of the smaller teams first, like Williams or Haas, like Oliver Bierman is, and then work your way up. You are stepping right into the top. It's a long way down if you tumble. And Kimi Antonelli has handled himself very, very well, confident, and just like you said, hanging around. Is that a Mercedes team strategy? Because I'm looking at George's placement right now. He's a point behind Max Verstappen. Mm-hmm. Do you just hang around all season? You let the chaos?
Has to, Adam. That's why, Mercedes, Toto Wolff, they spent the money to get him ready in the off season. The amount of testing mileage that he had done in previous older cars for Mercedes in the wintertime it was a lot. It was like 10,000 kilometers or something, if I'm not mistaken. Like it was a lot of mileage that he had gotten. Everything they could do to make sure that he was going to be ready if they had a car that they felt would be able to compete for a constructors championship and maybe possibly a driver's title as well. But for Toto Wolff, the mindset was constructors championship, right? Coming into this season, he really wants this. And for them to get Antonelli as prepared as he could be, and credit to Antonelli as well for soaking up all the information, because you can tell that he has actually put in a lot of hard work behind the scenes. You can hear it on the radio when he talks to Bono. You can, when I talk to people in the paddock, you can hear that he's actually put in like a ton of work. And I think in this race, he probably he probably would have finished higher, Adam. He picked up some floor damage on lap 1, and Mercedes told me that really compromised his pace, throughout the entire race. So he got points. They were good points. He probably could have gotten even better if he hadn't have had picked up that damage on the opening lap there. Just all around extremely impressive. A lot of these rookies have been, but obviously I would expect him to kind of be maybe not this high, but close because of all the mileage that he's gotten in the off season. Mm-hmm. I think he's surpassed my expectations for sure. So far, it's only 2 races, right? It's only 2 races.
For sure. But I mean, we can only go on what we've seen. Right?
100%.
Like, that's all we have. It's like, if this looks outdated in 10 races, well, that's because 10 races have gone by.
Yeah.
So we're not making huge predictions on the future. One thing I do want to say, though, is one of the funniest memes I saw come out of today was, I don't know if you've seen Game of Thrones.
Yes.
But do you know when the old lady, I forget, Onella or something, basically she says, tell Cersei, I want her to know it was me. Yeah. So they had a Carlos Sainz picture, and it's like, tell Fred, I want him to know it was me, because he got into the points at the behest of Ferrari. Well, I guess because Ferrari was DQ'd. Albon and Sainz, Bierman and Ocon both get double points. It's early, but Tim, when was the last time you can remember Williams being 4th in the Drivers' Championship? Because that's where they currently sit.
I can't believe it. It's
Constructors' Championship.
Yeah. I can't believe it, Adam. It's pretty wild. I didn't, never expected them to be this good. When we were watching them in testing, I was like, "Ooh, that's a good car." Mm-hmm. But then in the race, then at the start of the season, you're like, "Oh wow, they're quick on a street track. Oh wow, they're quick in high temps. Oh wow, they're quick in the wet. Oh wow, they're quick at a high speed circuit like China." And then you're just like, "Oh, the possibilities for this team now are very big." It's like, I think at some points this season, Adam, I think the Williams car could definitely be competing for potential podiums, maybe not outright, but just hanging around and picking them up. I couldn't see why not. I think for Carlos, he still needs to understand how to extract the performance when the car's on the limit. So soft tires, low fuel tanks, because he has struggled in the qualifying to keep up with Alex. But that's just Alex's understanding of the car itself. Mm-hmm. And so it's just going to take some time for Carlos to kind of find his way with the setup to get to that limit like Alex does so quickly.
And what a different storyline, by the way, Tim, we're talking about. Alex this time last year bins the car. Logan Sargent can't race.
Disaster.
This year, it's hey, they're double points. Alex got points in the first race. They're 4th in the Constructors' Championship. Do we expect that to last? Probably not, but still a great start. And that's, you got to feel that Williams team, that has got to feel like, I don't know, like somebody gave them, not to say Red Bull, but an energy drink directly to the veins. Like, it's got to feel awesome.
Oh, man, because I think it's just like that thing, right, Adam, where it's just the possibilities. Mm-hmm. Like, what are the possibilities for this team moving forward? And I could definitely see them like battling for podiums. Like, I could see them in and around that, doing things like that. And I think that's such a far way they've come from where they were. And it's an incredible turnaround. I never expected it. I don't think anybody did. No one saw this coming. It's the exact same car as last year. Like, it's very close to the same car as last year. They've just done a couple different tweaks here, there, a couple different aero setups, different floor, tweaked the suspension a tiny bit. The same chassis, still the same chassis as last year.
Yeah, but they did it. They're doing it anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, hilariously, Haas also in the double points after what we thought was going to be a disaster start for them. Whatever ailed them in Australia, they seemed to get a much better handle on, and that car had some pep today.
Did. I think they learned a lot from the sprint quali and the 2 different setups. So they had what they were doing with Esteban where he ended up. I mean, obviously all the way at the back.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had Behrman, who was further up, and he was able to advance through quali. I think they learned a lot from that, and then also in the sprint race itself. Again, learning a lot through that as well. I'm really impressed with how much work that team has done behind the scenes in a short amount of time to really figure things out when they don't have a ton of resources.
Yep.
I mean, it's not like, Haas has, 1,000 people back at one of their factories, combing through data. They just don't have that. I think what they've done here is pretty impressive. I'm excited to see where they can go, because this is a car that, you and I did discuss where like what are the possibilities when we were coming into the season, right? And now we're starting to kind of see like, oh, okay, it looks like they may have gotten things under control with their car. It definitely is going to need some updates. There are going to be tracks where they're going to be struggling at, and they may struggle to find the balance window of it. But I was really impressed with the drive from Esteban. Honestly, he was my driver of the day. Don't know why he didn't. Don't know why he
did you like the Oliver Bierman chow when he passed Jack?
Yeah.
I like that. That's confidence. I like that kid. He's funny. Yeah. And one of the first racers ever to get 2 points, to get points with two different teams to start his career in consecutive races. So he's a pretty special talent, it seems like.
Yeah, 100%.
So, yeah,
I'm excited to see where Ollie can get where Ollie can get to as well. I mean, had a really challenging start to the season, obviously, Adam, by obviously crashing in free practice 1 in Australia, then missing free practice 2 and spinning off and getting beached in free practice 3. So I think he's done well to kind of build that confidence back up for sure.
Absolutely. Now I'm looking at another person who's very quietly hanging around, and that's Canada's own Lance Stroll, who's put in some 2 very good races. Mm-hmm. Again, not racing his own race. Like sometimes, especially with younger drivers, when they start their careers, they get feisty and they don't want to let anyone pass. Lance was very smart today about letting the people through who needed to go through, playing defense when he needed to play defense. And for 2 straight races, Lance Stroll has scored points. It puts him 8th. He is tied with Esteban Ocon with 10 points each. By the way, Haas Ferrari, I should have mentioned this. Haas Ferrari only 3 points behind actual Ferrari to start the year. But Lance has been the guy that's really kept Aston Martin going because Fernando has had to, he spun off last race. This race, his brakes caught fire. So just kind of bad luck. But Lance has put in 2 really rock solid races with a car that we didn't expect much out of.
No, still don't. Still not a great car. I think the drivability of it is good, and that's what gives the drivers the confidence to extract the performance from it. Shame for Fernando. He was in a good spot to get some points this weekend. They both were. I think they both probably with this with the disqualification, they both probably would have had a chance of both being in the points. That being said, for Lance to, squeak out, 36, 37 laps on hard tires to go as long as he did. Yeah. The last one to pit by miles and still being able to set personal bests on a tire that was coming to the end of its life is extremely impressive. That I don't think enough people understand how hard that is, and I don't think it got enough credit or recognition either because of how challenging that is to do. You have to remember that when you're starting the race, it's so easy, Adam, to just cook your tire and really really hurt it for the entire race, your race run, your opening race run, you can really, really damage the tire a lot. So for him to stay out of trouble, pick and choose his fights where necessary, because that's him really having to think through the race, right? Thinking where, should I be fighting with Lando Norris right now? Should I be fighting with I'm trying to remember who else, like the Ferraris? Should I be fighting? Like, it's like immediately he's like, no, it's not my race. It's not my race. That's not my race either. I have to be realistic of where this car is and where it can finish. So I have to make sure I'm saving the tire as much as I can. And then using that to his benefit. And when it comes to towards the end of his first stint, that's just a driver who's really locked in. I think the work that he does with Gary Gannon, who's his new race engineer for this season, the two of them are really on the same page. They work really well together. You can hear, I can just tell this is like, Lance was, don't get me wrong here, Lance was great at trying to make a really difficult car fast for the last 2 years. That was very inconsistent. He's up against a teammate that can he's Fernando Alonso. He can drive anything and make it fast. But the problem is that you don't pick up when the car is starting to pull back on you, because when you have a driver like that, they don't necessarily get ahead of the development. Mm-hmm. And that is what really hurts you in the long run.
Right. Because this is, forgive the term, but it's not a sprint. It's a marathon, right?
Yeah,
it's a full race.
Exactly. And I think you're now seeing a car that has a bigger operating window. It may not have the most performance in it, but it has a bigger operating window to allow both of the drivers to really exploit and test. Where is it that we need to be quicker? Where is it that we need to add performance? How much of that performance do we need to add? And just give us something that we can just actually drive and feel confident with, and we'll make up the difference.
Yeah.
And that's what both of these drivers are doing. Like, this is not a car that should be getting into Q3 or, it really isn't. Like, it's really impressive what both of those drivers are doing. And it's very impressive what Lance has done so far to start the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Little shout out to Nico Hulkenberg too, who scores more points again. Kick Sauber Ferrari 6 points this year. I just want to roll it back to 2024 for a second here. Kick Sauber Ferrari. Oh, that's right. They had 4. So they've already outdone themselves in the first 2 races this year versus last year. That's got to feel really, really good.
Tough race for them, though.
Tough race.
Bortoletto spinning off, finishing P14. Hulkenberg again, P15, right? Like, just very difficult race for both of those drivers. But, looking at the constructors' standings, it is impressive to see where they're at. And I think, Adam, there are going to be race weekends where Sauber is, sniffing at getting points.
I think they'll be competitive in a lower grade way. Yeah,
I do.
Which last year you couldn't say.
Yeah, exactly. They've made a huge development, like in terms of development over the winter.
Yeah.
They've made a huge push.
Alpine are the only team so far to not score any points, Tim. We won't sit on that for very long, but I think it speaks to the fact that Formula One as a sport is changing significantly.
100%.
And we're starting to see point spreads throughout, and that's where you have that's why you have a cost cap, right?
Yep.
As Gene Haas liked to say, or he said on Drive to Survive like 4 years ago, I'd like to compete once in a while. So it's great. And the team that is obviously they were so good today that it was boring. Not that the race was boring. I love the race, but they are sort of the last story I have listed here before we get to the questions. McLaren, Oscar Piastri and Lando come back from a very mediocre, I think by their standard, sprint race. I don't think that's where either of them would have wanted to finish, but Oscar redeems himself later in the day, gets pole. Lando, it looks like he's going to be second, but George Russell is able to sneak in there with a great last lap on quali. And then, of course, Lando gets past George. Oscar races basically top to tail in first place, except for when he had to change his tires. And I think that was what everybody expected the main race to be. It was supposed to be McLaren's doing quite well with it. And one of the things that in Drive to Survive, Will Buxton sort of says is, they're making too many mistakes. Through the first couple of races this year, there has been a mistake. Oscar did go off the track last week.
Yeah.
But this is, in good conditions, the kind of race we needed to see more of from McLaren last year, were they to fight for the Drivers' Championship. And this year, it seems like this is a team that's got it a little bit more dialed in. What would you say to that?
Definitely has way more dialed in. I think my thoughts on their car is that, and I said this in the quali post podcast that I did for us, is the fact that their operating window doesn't seem to be as big as it once was. Mm-hmm. They do have a lot of peakiness within the car. They are, however, really good on the race tire. That car is really good on the race tire. However, Oscar Piastri impressed the hell out of me this weekend.
Why?
Simply because of everything that went down in Australia, and just came out with a good attitude, mentally strong, and picked up right where he left off on a track that last year he wasn't very good at.
Right.
And just picked up at a track and was just like, you know what? I've worked hard over the off season trying to learn where the weaknesses are, even with different tracks. That is just such a small detail that really does go unnoticed that we should talk about, because this is a track that not his favorite, right? Not very good at this type of configuration. And he was able to figure it out, make it work. He really worked the problems. Managed 42 laps, I believe it was, on a hard tire. And the hard tire, I think, for them was better than what they had expected.
Yeah.
And I think for Piastri within the race, he was expecting them to go to a two-stopper.
Yep.
He wasn't expecting to, bolt on the hards and be like, okay, Oscar,
good luck.
We're going with plan A. He's like, hey, great. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, what do you think about taking this thing to the end? It's just kind of like,
and it's what he had to do.
Yeah, he has to adapt, and he has to change his style, and that's one of the things that actually Lando had pointed out in the post-race press conference. Was Lando was really impressed with Piastri's ability to adapt, especially at a track like the one in Shanghai. And he was very impressed with what Oscar had to do. I was as well. Honestly, Adam, watching this race from Oscar for me is, I just get that feeling that this driver is going to be in contention for this championship. And Adam, I think he could win it.
Well, no question. And Tim, it seems like we get a good fight on our hands, because Lando seems to have matured even a little bit over the winter in terms of mistake-free. That car was literally falling apart on him in that last lap. Yeah. I think George Russell gained 2 or 3 seconds in a lap on him. Thankfully, It was the last lap. His brakes were toast. It was over, but they just made it. Let's talk a little bit about how impressive it was that Lando was able to keep that thing going.
I mean, we heard it on the post-race shows, everybody saying it, all ex-drivers as well, me included right here, right now, is that one of the things that you fear the most in a race car is when the brake pedal goes long. That basically devastates your confidence, and you don't want to be in the car.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, of course.
Because of obviously the rate at which you were going at, but that is one of your fears, is a brake pedal that's going long. I think the team kept it from him for a while, that it was sort of heading in that direction. But then once they had to kind of talk him sort of through it, he was able to sort of carry on as best he could. Lando said that the brake issue for him, he felt it started to go really early.
Yep.
And he said the last 10 laps, like, he was really nervous to just finish the race. Like, he said he was lucky to finish the race altogether, and in front of Russell at the same time.
It's amazing. Yeah,
it really was. It was impressive from Lando as well. I think, like Zach said, like, I can't remember. I'm paraphrasing. He's like, "Hey, it's not too bad when you got two of the best drivers on the grid." I was like, you know
that
what?
sounds like
hey,
Zach.
I was like, hey, like he is not wrong on this one at all. I mean, both drivers were very impressive this weekend and in this race. That both of them facing the challenges that they had to get through. Yeah, we've got at least 4 drivers in contention, maybe 5 for this driver's title at the moment. I'm excited to see how these two get along as we get deeper into the season.
Yeah, no real fights yet, but we know it's coming, Tim. We know it's coming, and we'll find out what those papaya rules are going to be. By the way, it is McLaren's 50th 1-2 finish in Formula One history. Also, the first time since I believe it was 2012 that McLaren have won 3 straight races. It goes to show. Goes to show how bad they were for how long.
Oh, yeah.
They were so bad.
Oh, 100%. We have questions, Adam.
Yes, I got them here, or unless you want to read.
No, you go for it.
All right, well, I got one from Noah here.
Oh.
And Noah says, and this is going back to Liam Lawson. Okay?
Oh.
As a Red Bull fan, I don't quite understand why Red Bull would pull Liam now to put Yuki in, who has even less experience with the Red Bull. And we kind of touched on this. I think they need to give Liam until summer break, which is why I bring this question up, because we haven't hit that part. Do you think do you think Red Bull's got the patience for that, Tim, to give somebody 15 races or whatever it is?
Depends where he's at in the next few races. I mean, if he's still a second off of Max, I mean, you can't consider keeping him in the car because he's just nowhere near getting points.
Yes.
That's the issue. It's not that, like, Liam isn't. It's the fact that he's not getting close or in the points. Like, that is their main priority. So if you're a couple tenths off of Max, heck, even 4 tenths, 5 tenths, I'm sure they would be okay with that because you would still be close to the points. You could be in the points, but the amount of the deficit now where they are is just, it's way too big, man. And I don't know what their thoughts are on this. They, it could be the fact that they may not know if he can close that gap down quick enough.
Yeah.
It's not that they don't believe in him or don't think he can do it. It's the fact that, like, okay, but by the time we get to race 5, is he going to have been able to shave off 6 tenths, 7 tenths? Yeah,
in certain sections, like he was like a second and a half off Max.
Oh yeah, deficit is massive to
crazy.
Max. Like, it's huge, Adam. So those are the questions that they are going to have to go through the data, analyze, and figure out what they want to do moving forward. I mean, either way, I think if they do decide to move on from Liam for this season, I do feel that he does deserve to stay in F1. They should swap him to the Racing Bulls. That's my opinion.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Number 2 from Jared. What's your way too early sense of whose car will be very good in Suzuka?
The McLarens are going to be good, I think, because they're really solid in the high-speed stuff. Mercedes, I think Mercedes is, it's like I said at the start of the season, I thought Mercedes had something and Total was feeling quite confident. So I think I'm going to say Mercedes is going to be up there too, Adam. I really think this is going to be McLaren Mercedes for the first few races here.
Okay. Yeah. I like that. I like that. Tim, for last one from Shorty 13. Tim, did you miss the memo on the FIA cracking down on foul language? How much community service are you going to have to do for all your slip-ups in the sim?
I apologize for the swearing. I'm going to get a handle on that, and we're not going to have to deal with that anymore. So sorry about that. But I will say you are allowed to swear in the race car.
Oh, okay.
So you just can't swear in the FIA post-race press conferences.
Okay. Well, Tim, you know what? I think it's time for you to have a relaxing afternoon because you've had a very busy weekend. All of your work happened overnight. I hope that you don't have anything left to do for SportsCenter or anything the rest of the day. I hope it's just relaxed Tim time.
I love a good Tim time, Adam. You know that.
All right, sir. Well, have yourself a good one.
Yeah, fine.
And I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Adam.